Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me on this most strange of years, right before Thanksgiving. I know there's so much going on, and there's a lot of competing uses for your time right now. So thank you for putting the needs of our students uh, first and taking the time to try to engage with some of this material. So today we're going to be talking about accessible Canvas page design. And this is part of a series I'm doing. This is week 2. So last week we talked a little bit about what is accessibility and sort of understanding the basics of the law. And today, of course, we're doing Canvas page design. And then we have 2 more trainings coming up that I'll show you in a minute that you're also welcome to join. And this is eligible for Flex. So you can go ahead and RSVP through the VRC, Vision Resource Center. If you didn't sign up in advance, just send me a private chat or reach out to me afterwards and I'll see what I can do to help. So thank you again for being here. And if you have other things going on and you may have to turn off your camera or mute yourself, that's absolutely fine. I know there's a lot going on at this time. But yes, please mute your mics if you have something loud going on, just so everyone can hear. Okay, let me make sure I don't have anyone in the waiting room. I don't think I do. Okay, so, and 2 people just entered the waiting room. Hold on. Just want to make sure everybody gets in here. Okay. Sorry, give me just a minute here to try to make sure I have my list here. Okay, middle. Okay. All right. So those of you who are just joining, welcome. My name is Dr. Karen Crozer. So I'm currently serving as the distance education specialist at Mission College, and I'm also normally a full-time faculty member. I am an associate professor of English at Los Angeles Mission College. And for me, my motivation for working with students with disabilities really comes from sort of early childhood memories of my mom, who used to really be an advocate for students with disabilities. I'm from a small town in Michigan, and this was before, people were really talking about a lot of these issues. And she was always out there advocating. And she passed back in 2010, but I often think of her. And so that's kind of where my passion for this topic comes from. And I also would like to thank my team at Mission College, both the DSPNS team, as well as the distance education team, our DE coordinator, Alabara. They have been so supportive as I put this together, and I could not be more grateful for their help. If you have any questions when we get to the end, I'm going to show you my email, so feel free to reach out. So, as I mentioned, this training is part of a series. So if you are able to join the next 2, they will be the next 2 Tuesdays, same time, 3 to 4:30. The one that follows next week will be about accessible document design. So making accessible Word, Google, PowerPoint, and PDF documents. And then the following Tuesday will be about accessible video design. So please feel free to join. And I am so glad to have all of you here today. A lot of this language is pulled from a course by the online network of educators called Creating Accessible Course Content. I highly recommend it, and I'm going to show you in a minute where you can sign up. And this information is shared under a Creative Commons attribution, and it's made possible through funding from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. So grateful for them being willing to share their work and help make this training possible. So this is going to be a bit of a whirlwind because I have about 90 minutes and around 45 slides. So we are going to be moving fast. It's possible that you aren't going to retain, it's actually, I guess, probable that you're not going to retain every single thing that I talk about today. That's okay. What I would recommend if you want to learn more about this is signing up for the @ONE Creating Accessible Course Content. It's a 4-week course. You'll have a moderator there. You can go really a lot more in depth than we can in the amount of time we have. So you can see there's one that starts in January, one that starts in March, and one that starts in April. What I would say is because we're kind of in this COVID moment, these classes are feeling up really fast. And they actually weren't even up the last time we had a training a week ago. So if you think you want one of these, I would recommend signing up ASAP because they really seem to fill fast. And they are $85, but check with your professional growth committee. You may be able to get some of that funded halfway. And then Marie, I see your comment in the chat. There is a way to get college credit for them. I haven't actually done it myself, but they will walk you through the process if you want to get credit. So definitely check that out if you're interested. You can Google Online Network of Educators and then just click on courses, and this will be the options that are there right now for creating accessible courses. So we have a lot of big goals for this training, hoping I can get through most of them and make you feel at least a little bit more confident about them. So my goal is at the end of this training, first, that we can use the rich content editor to create a content page that is easy for all students to navigate. Next, I want you to be able to use headings to create a structured page that is easy for all students to navigate. I also want you to know how to use bullets and numbered lists appropriately, use color wisely, create meaningful links. Hold on, I'm admitting someone. Hard to read and admit at the same time. Okay, hold on. Oh, sorry. 1 minute. Let me get out of here for a second and try to admit a few more people. Okay. Thank you for your patience with that. Let's go ahead and resume. Okay, use color wisely. Create meaningful links to web resources, both within and outside of our courses, and then provide alternative text for images. And finally, create tables that can be navigated by all students. So obviously, this is a lot of things that I want you to know in a very short amount of time. So you may not feel that you have mastery of all these items, but hopefully you'll feel a little bit more comfortable working on these things moving forward. So even though I named this training about creating accessible Canvas pages, which are what we're really doing, whether we realize it or not, is creating accessible HTML. And you might be kind of wondering, how am I even using HTML? I didn't even know I was. That's fine. You don't have to suddenly become a computer programmer. I am going to try to walk you through the process of using HTML to create accessible courses. And most of it's sort of hidden in the back end of the system. So you do not have to know HTML. I don't, to be able to use it. So if you're like me, I'm an English person. I like tech, but I certainly don't speak fluent HTML. You may be kind of wondering what exactly it is. So it stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it's a computer code to create web pages. So we can use HTML to manipulate how our web pages look, including changes to the font and to the graphics and to hyperlinks. We actually use HTML all the time in our online courses. Whenever you're writing instructions to a discussion or an assignment, you're writing an announcement, or you're creating a content page, you're actually using HTML. So whether you knew it or not, you have actually done a little bit of coding as long as you have taught online before. So where do we use HTML? So I just listed off a couple of the places where you might be using it and not knowing it. But one of the ways to use HTML is through a content page. I'm sure a lot of you, or maybe all of you even, have used a content page before. So when you're looking at that sidebar list in Canvas and you click pages and you add a new page, that's it. That's a content page. And even though you're not writing it in HTML, what you are creating on your side is then being converted to HTML. So how do you edit a content page? You are actually using something that is known as the RCE, or the Rich Content Editor. So the Rich Content Editor is how you are going to adapt everything and format everything for your students. Now, I would like to point out that what I've shown here is actually the original RCE. There is a new RCE that you can toggle on and off in your settings. They do look fairly similar, but just to show you the difference, this is the one that is the original that if you've been teaching for a while, you are probably pretty used to. And down here, this is the new one, which you can see it's a little bit more streamlined, one line instead of two. And then just for me, when I'll eyeball it, I always notice that the big bold B isn't here. It starts with the 12-point font. Now you can accomplish what you need to do in either of these. But I am kind of interested in those who are there. If you are able to write in the chat, I'd love to know whether you are using the original RCE or the new RCE. So if you're able to go to chat and just write in original or new, that'll kind of help me to know which one most of you are using for this training. So this is a question I asked myself when I started teaching online, which is why use content pages? And the reason I asked myself this was because I already had the resources that I used in a face-to-face class. I had my handouts, I had my PowerPoints, and I thought, well, they're already created. All I need to do is just upload them so that students can see them, which sounds logical. But there is a problem with this approach. And the problem is that a lot of the sort of traditional media we use, like a handout or a PowerPoint, these things are not automatically accessible. And so they require sort of extra steps for a student with disability to be able to use them. Another thing that I think about that doesn't even necessarily have to do with disabilities is the fact that everyone's on a different type of device now. You know, we have iPhones, we have Androids, we have other types of phones, we have multiple types of tablets, we have multiple types of computers. Well, I don't know if you've ever tried to open a PDF on your phone. It's possible, you can read it, but for me, I'm usually, zooming in and trying to scroll back and forth, reading the text. It's not always that user friendly. Now, if you put something into HTML, which is what happens when you use a content page, your device is already automatically adjusting everything for your screen. So it's going to fit within the screen that you're looking at. It's going to be easy to make it bigger or smaller. So when you start converting to content pages, you're going to find that it doesn't only help your students with disabilities, it also helps all of your students because, for better or worse, 69% of our students are low income. Not everyone's going to have a really nice, fancy computer. People are going to be working on all kinds of devices. And we need what we're giving them to work on all those different devices. So, what I would recommend is over time, if you can, the things that don't have to be in these other formats, like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or something else like a PDF, if you can, slowly start the process of converting them to content pages. Yes, it takes a while, but it is a lot more user friendly for everyone. And one of the things we talked about briefly last week was how when we start thinking about universal design and we start thinking about our students with disabilities and making changes for them, a lot of times we find out that we're helping other people too. So if you remember Jack Fisher in Kalamazoo, the veteran in 1945 who was noticing that disabled veterans could not go over the curb easily, he came up with this idea, petitioning Kalamazoo for curb cuts. And now, of course, they're everywhere. And they don't just help people with mobility issues, though they definitely help those people. They also help people with strollers. They also help bike riders. They also help people with luggage who are going to and from different locations. So when we make our content, when we kind of start using content pages, basically you will find that you will make life easier for all your students and not just those with disabilities. Jeanette, looking at your question, what you would do if you wanted to change to the new RCE, Rich Content Editor, is you would need to go to your settings, and then there's a place that you can turn it on and off. Okay. So when it comes to designing web pages, there's something that's really important. And this is important again for everyone, not just our students with disabilities. And that's readability, because all of us want our students to be able to read and understand our content. And if they're reading our content and they're not remembering it or retaining it or understanding it, it makes our lives a lot harder, right? Because we end up answering the same question 500 different times. We want our content to be readable so that students can remember it and retain it. And what's really cool is that there's been all these studies now, and they track people's eyes and what they're looking at on the page. And then after they do that, they give the people reading comprehension tests. So basically they're able to measure how people were reading and how well they comprehended things. And out of these studies have come 4 important design principles that are really important for content pages. And they're not only going to help students with disabilities, they're going to help all of your students remember your material. So let me ask a question that anyone can answer. How does this slide make you feel?
Overwhelmed.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I see overwhelmed, dizzy. Yep. Anybody else? Finding Waldo.
So
Absolutely.
much,
Oh, go ahead.
so much text,
Yes.
and
Yes. So much text.
there's no division, no organization, no pattern, no structure to break it up in order to know how what the categories are.
Absolutely. And that is what is really overwhelming. I feel the same way. I'm reading in the comments. I feel like I'm back in grad school, blinding, not wanting to read it. We're going to read the first and last sentences only. Where are the cliff notes? All these things are very normal reactions. And I'm even an English professor who likes reading. And I look at this and I have no desire to read this. So let me ask you, what do you think it is about the way this is formatted that makes you feel that way? I know you started to talk about it a little bit. Like you said, there's no structure. What else?
Well, there's no bolding, no bullet points, no indentations, no separations of whether it's single space, double space, in order to
Absolutely.
help your eyes flow, spot what you need to spot.
Absolutely.
It's
And
just
those
a bunch of
bunch of words, right? Yeah, great point.
yeah.
So there's no indents, there's no bouldering or heading, there's no bullets. The font is really small. There's no break points. Good. The text isn't prioritized. Excellent. So when you're thinking about designing your page, this is a good model of what you don't want to do. Because even if you have your A+ student who really cares about the content and is really trying, they're going to struggle to remember this because our brains don't process information this way. This is not a great way to read and remember, to have things like this. So, like you said, when I see this, I feel very overwhelmed. And I'm saying this as someone who's sighted, right? I don't have a visual impairment, but I find that block of text very hard to read, and I would find it hard to understand and retain. I mean, just the way that it's presented, our brain, it doesn't give your brain any time to process any of it. And we know that the way our brains work, we can only keep so much in short-term memory before we need a break to sort of let some of that go to long-term memory. So if you have a long block of text like that, it's going to cause all these bad feelings of probably boredom, dread, but it's also going to keep your students from comprehending and remembering the text, which is definitely not something we want. And that's just for our students who are sighted. And it's going to have a similar effect on our students who are visually impaired, because their screen reader is just going to read one long thing without sort of any breaks. So you pointed out a lot of great things that were wrong, and I'm just have a couple of them pulled out here that I came up with. But yeah, this paragraph is way too long. It's justified on both the left and the right margins. And I think it doesn't help that the space between the lines is so small either. It just looks like an insurmountable mountain. So how do we do it right then? So I want to go over the 4 design principles that have emerged out of these studies of people's eyes and reading comprehension and how we read and retain information from web pages. So the first principle is use white space thoughtfully. So white space is our friend. We need white space to give our brains time to retain and remember everything. So kind of underneath that main idea of use white space thoughtfully, you want to keep your paragraphs short and concise. And look, I am an English professor. I am really long-winded. So I have to remind myself of this all the time. The way I would write a paragraph in a book needs to be different than the way I would write a paragraph on a Canvas page. People just aren't used to these long, enormous paragraphs on the web. Our paragraphs need to be shorter and more concise than they would in other mediums. We want most of our text to be left justified, because when it's centered, it's harder for the eye to follow it. And then we want to use the default spacing in Canvas to ensure that the text is at least 1.5 spacing. Now, the good thing about this is that Canvas already does 2 of these things for us. Canvas is already left justifying most of our text, and it's already automatically putting it at 1.5 spacing. So that means the only thing that we need to worry about, as long as we don't mess with sort of the presets, is that we have these shorter paragraphs. So think short, think concise, think shorter than you would have them in an academic essay. It's just a different medium than that.
Karen,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt. Are you saying to if we're posting an assignment, the title of the assignment and things that we would normally put on a handout in the center of the paper to just put it on the left side?
So I would say still centering is still fine, but I would use it sparingly. So for a few words like a title, yeah, I absolutely still do that. But for like sentences, I wouldn't center it because I think it could be just harder on the eye.
Do you have a sample of what that would look like?
If we have time, I can try to show you at the end some of
Okay.
the things that I've been retrofitting myself.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so that white space is going to literally give readers a break, a visual cue to stop and process. And our brains need that. So that's principle number 1. And again, this is going to help all students, but it's also going to help your students with disabilities, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So the second design principle is chunking. So besides creating white space, these shorter paragraphs help with chunking, which is the idea of breaking information up into more digestible pieces. So when you see a whole block of text, your brain, when we have complex things we have to understand, we need to break it down so into smaller pieces. And doing that helps students skim the page more quickly and efficiently. And you might say, well, I don't want my students to skim the page. I want them to read it. But good reading comprehension, good readers actually skim first and then they read, and that helps them remember. So you don't want to discourage skimming. You want students to be able to skim and then read more slowly so they can really digest the entire thing. And cognitive scientists have found that our short-term memory really can't retain very much. So when you ask a student to retain a giant paragraph, with no white space and no sort of space for the brain to pause and sort of try to shuffle some of that information to long-term memory, it's actually going to decrease their comprehension of what you've written, which is something I'm pretty sure none of us want. I think all of us would love for our students to retain more of what we write and say, and it would probably make our lives easier. So these shorter paragraphs will also help with chunking. A third design principle that's going to help everyone is headings. So headings are going to help readers by creating stopping points throughout the page. So again, this kind of lets a reader skim and sort of see what the material is going to be about before they slow down and read a little bit more slowly. So to be effective, and we'll get into this a little bit more into the presentation, but the headings are going to need to be descriptive, and they do need to be formatted using HTML. And I will show you how to do this, but you want to think of them as signposts that are going to help your students navigate the page. And then the fourth design principle is to use lists. So bulleted and numbered lists not only create white space, they also help us sort of chunk and remember and understand information. And they reduce cognitive load. And in the year of 2020, we are all carrying an enormous load cognitively and emotionally. So any way that we can reduce that cognitive load on our students so that the hard work goes towards the learning of the material, we want to do that. So think back to that big chunk of text. Now, I couldn't fit the whole thing here and still have it be readable because it was a lot of text, but I want to show you just an example of what it would look like with headers and with bullets. So the way that it was organized, it was just one euphemism after the other. And you can see here, they're started to be a little bit more understandable. Now there's headings that say, group the quotes around topics like industry, patience, perseverance. There's bullets, there's white space. That's going to really help the reader. Now it's not going to be quite as much of a challenge to read it. So we know that something like this is more technically accessible, but do you think it might also be more usable to just your everyday students? And anyone can answer.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's just like you said, all the emotional reactions we have to that other block of text, plus just the reading comprehension piece, that it's going to really help all of our students.
This is looks more like somewhat of an outline form to where they could, okay, for industry, bullet point, boom, 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 boom. The more pertinent concepts in short sentences, getting right to the point of what you want them to learn and comprehend and grasp and be able to retain.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's such a good comment, and I completely agree. I'm gonna, go ahead.
I said, this is also a great exercise for students to do, to show them a big block of text and say, if you're faced with this problem, here's what you can do, text for yourself. And,
Absolutely. I think it really is, it teaches them a lot about how, like you said, sometimes you can change that format for yourself as a student, and that could help you. So that's a really good point. Were there any other comments or questions? And then anyone, I know I have a couple of individuals from our DSPS office. Does anyone want to add or correct anything? I'll stop here. Are there any questions before I go on, or comments?
You're doing fine, Karen.
Oh, good. Let me know if I take a sharp left turn and crash. Okay, great. Any other questions or concerns? Okay. You feel free to interrupt me later if you want. Okay, so now we've kind of talked about how can we sort of design for everyone. so that they can retain information, so that their brains can understand it and remember it. Now we need to kind of add a little extra layer, because now we want to think about how we can give those same benefits to our students who are visually impaired. So our visually impaired students are most likely going to be using an assistive technology called a screen reader. An example of a very popular one would be JAWS. And basically what that screen reader is going to do is it's going to use software to read a web-based text to the user. So without the formatting, think back to that original giant block of text that you saw. A screen reader would literally just start at the first word, continue to the last word without really any other indications of how to absorb or chunk that material. So it would not only hurt our sighted students to present text that way, but it would also potentially hurt or bother our students with visual disability. With a visual disability. Okay. So when you're building in these design elements, so all the things we've been talking about, the headers, the bullets, the important thing to do is to actually build them in through the rich content editor, the rich text editor, RCE. Basically, when you build them in properly, that's going to allow a screen reader to read them the right way. So, for example, you have this rich content editor, and this is the original one. And what you could do is you could type directly into this box. Now, you also could copy and paste in from something else. So, for instance, when I'm retrofitting something that used to be a Word document, for instance, I used to always have my essay guidelines be Word documents. So when I go to kind of bring them in, sometimes when you copy and paste, you are getting sort of embedded HTML that you don't really see, especially if you're copying and pasting from a web page. So just be mindful of that. Sometimes when I'm copy and pasting from a web page, I'll put it into Word and try to sort of remove all the formatting first. But if you are copy and pasting things in from a web page, just be aware if things are doing crazy, crazy line breaks, crazy spacing, it may be because you were sort of pulling in HTML from this other source without realizing it. But you are going to be able to make changes in the RCE. So it looks like most of you, from what I'm looking up in the chat, it looks like most of you are using the original RCE. So what I wanted to just take a minute to do is show you the sort of 4-minute Canvas tutorial on the original RCE. And let me stop screen sharing a minute to make sure I'm sharing my sound. And what you want to do is they're going to be similar. But if you do convert over, there is a different tutorial that is just for the new one. So hopefully, let me know if you can't hear the sound. It's probably going to be my luck that it's not going to load, because that always happens when you're doing a presentation. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can. Okay, let me stop screen sharing for a minute and see if I can open it in my browser for you. Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, give me 1 second.
If it works, Karen, could you put the link in the?
Yes, I can absolutely do that. Let me see if I can find the guide for all users. Okay, here we go. So yeah, I'll play it for you in just a second, but I'm also going to go ahead and put the link. Let me go ahead and put it in the chat for all of you too. Okay, so let me see if I can get this to work this way.
In this video, how to use the rich content editor in Canvas. To learn more about this topic, visit the Canvas guides at guides.canvaslms.com. Additionally, permissions vary between users and institutions, so what you see in this video may be different from what you see in Canvas. Here you have the Rich Content Editor, which you can use to add and format content for several features in Canvas, including announcements, assignments, discussions, quizzes, and the syllabus. But for this video, we will show you how to use the editor in Pages. Format your content by highlighting the text you want to edit and clicking the different formatting options in the toolbar. To make the text accessible for screen readers, be sure to use the paragraph and header styles rather than resizing the text. In addition to text formatting options, there are other editing options that are helpful for organizing and inserting relevant content for your course. Let's look at a few of these tools. First, you can add a table by clicking the Tables button. Then, choose Insert Table in the drop-down menu. Select the number of cells you want your table to have. With your table selected, click the Tables icon again, and then choose Table Properties to edit your table's general and advanced settings. Note that you can also merge and split cells, as well as add and delete rows and columns. You can then add content to the table in the Rich Content Editor by clicking and typing in the cells. Next, the Record Upload Media tool allows you to insert audio or video into the Rich Content Editor. You can record your media on the spot or upload an existing media file. To record your own media, select the Record Media tab. Click the camera or microphone icon, respectively for video or audio, and click to record. Click again to stop recording, and then choose to save or re-record. To upload media from your computer, click the Upload Media tab, choose Video or Audio, and select the appropriate file. You can also embed content from the Content selector. Using the Content selector, you can link to other content in your course, insert files, or upload images. To link to other content and locations within your course, first select and highlight the word or words you would like to make into a link. Then, click the Links tab in the Content selector, and select the course content to which you'd like to link. A yellow box will form around the new link, and the word or words will turn blue to indicate that the link has been created. To link to a course file or upload a new file link, select the Files tab and insert one of your course files or upload a new file from your computer. If you are an instructor, you can insert images from the Content selector. Click the Images tab, search the Flickr Creative Commons site, upload a new image from your computer, or insert existing course images. Make sure to save the changes made to your page. You've now completed this tutorial video on the Rich.
Okay, so that's just a quick overview. And now I want to go over sort of some of the specifics, and I can also give you, I can give you some demonstrations too. So let me go ahead and open my presentation back up. Okay, so the thing that's really key when we're talking about students with disabilities is all those design elements that you should ideally be aiming for to make your things more readable and understandable. So the chunking, the white space, the bullets and lists, the headings, we need to make those visible to our students who are blind or visually impaired. So the way to do that is by making sure headers and lists and all those different things are done through RCE. And I'm happy to do a little bit of a demo after this. We kind of get through some of the more of the slides to show you what I mean by that. But for instance, back in the day when I would make my essay guidelines and I wanted a header, I would just make it a bigger font and then I would bold it. Well, that's great for my sighted students, but it's not great for my students with visual disabilities because a screen reader isn't reading font size. It isn't telling them when things are bold. So a screen reader is going to read that heading just like anything else. So I don't want to do it that way. Another thing I used to do is put in little dashes when I wanted to make a list, like a little dash or an M dash or something like that. But again, that's not telling a screen reader that you have a list. So you actually want to use the list function in RCE, and that's going to make those good design choices visible to everyone. So I want you to avoid a couple common mistakes. So let's start by talking about mistakes that people sometimes make. So this is a mistake that has to do with listing. So one common mistake is not paying attention to sort of the logical order of your list. So think of, for example, about this list: cows, sheep, lettuce, bunnies, tomatoes. It sort of feels like some of these things are not like the other. This list doesn't really feel very parallel. So the fix would be to group like things together. So common livestock in California here is used as a heading, and now we have cows, sheep, and rabbits together. Then we have common crops in California, and lettuce, tomatoes, and garlics are put together. So if you have a list of things and some of those things are not alike, you may be able to split them into separate lists so that the logical sort of listing makes more sense and is more memorable. So that's one common mistake. Another common mistake is what I was just talking about with paragraph styles. So instead of actually setting up a header, well-meaning faculty often just make their header bigger or they bold it. And again, a screen reader is not going to be able to see those choices. They're not going to read it out loud to a student. So a student's not going to know that it's a header. Another thing that I was completely guilty of that I've learned to avoid is sometimes I would underline my titles or my headings. The problem is all of the things that we put in our class, our students are seeing on a device. And if you think about it, what does an underline usually signify on a web page? Anyone can answer.
A link.
Exactly. So when you put in an underline that you don't need, your students are probably clicking on it. They're probably figuring out eventually that they can't click on it. But again, why create the confusion? So when you're making headers, don't just adjust size and bolding. Do it through RCE and avoid using underlining unless something's an actual hyperlink. And then your regular text, the text that's not a header, will just be called paragraph.
So I have a question, quick question.
Yes.
So does that mean it's a problem if we set up, like a header and we bold it? Is the problem to bold it as well?
Not as long as you've set it up as a header. If you set it up as a header and then you want to do more fancy things to it, that's fine, as long as it's labeled as a header. Any other questions so far?
Yeah, Karen, so can you change the font of the header?
So yes and no. I mean, you can try. It can be a little tricky trying to change too much of it because again, with HTML, it's just sort of adjusting it for the screen. So there are changes you can make. How they will display can be a little bit challenging on various devices. So for me, I only sort of use a special font once in a while if I'm trying to make a point about something. Otherwise, I tend to just use the normal font. But you can go in and try to change it. Any other questions?
One more question.
Okay.
Does the screen reader is it able to navigate if you put a table? Like for example, if I want to post uh if I want to post my
You cut out for me for a second.
okay, so
Now I can hear you.
all right, does the screen reader read pages? I mean oh my gosh, sorry.
Tables?
Tables.
Yes. Yes, that's a great question. And actually, there is a very specific way you have to tell the screen reader where the table starts that we're actually
Okay.
going to talk about. But yes, you can
Great.
use a table. Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. Okay, thank you. Yes, you can change the font. I see Alex wrote exactly. You can change it, yeah. Okay, so for this problem, you just need you just need to pick the actual heading that you're using here. So this is from the original RCE, which is what most of you are using. So you hit this little arrow and what comes down is paragraph. So that's just normal text. You might notice header 1 isn't here. And that's because header 1 is whatever the title of that page is. So whatever your page title is, that's going to be displayed the biggest, and that's going to be considered header 1. But anything under the title is going to be header 2. And then if you wanted to break up header 2 with multiple subtopics, then you would use header 3. And if you wanted to break up header 3 into subsections, then you would use header 4. And then paragraph would just be normal text. I also like experimenting with fonts. What I would just say is that the font that doesn't have like Times New Roman, I always forget which one's serif and which one's, I guess this is sans serif, but serif text is a little bit harder to read on a device. So that's why I try not to use fancy fonts unless it's a short bit of text and I'm really just making a point. But yeah, so you're going to properly tag things. So like if this was your header 2, you'd highlight it, you'd go up here and you would choose header 2. And the nice thing is it's going to automatically make it, you know, these presets. You can go in and change them. I don't do that often because I find that when I start messing around, I usually just make it less readable. And the presets are pretty good, but you can play with it. And then you're just going to highlight it and choose what you need. And then the regular text, you're just going to highlight, and that's going to be paragraph. So another common mistake is just when you have sort of a nesting error with your headings. And usually this is just because we're rushing and we accidentally choose the wrong header. So if you look in this example, down here we have heading 1, and then underneath there's 2 things that are heading 2. And then, oops, we made a mistake. We skipped to header 4. That's going to be a little bit confusing for our students if other things are in header 3. So this is just a small error, but you know, once you do your headers, you just want to kind of look back and make sure they're in a sequence and you're not skipping from H1 to H3 or something like that. So yeah, the fix is just make sure your headings are in order, and remember the title of your page is already heading 1. So what you're going to go with next is going to be heading 2. Okay. So like we talked about, lists, bulleted and numbered lists are fantastic for the brain, for remembering things. So, and they create white space, they give the brain a break. So they're wonderful. But sometimes, just like we have a tendency to do our headings just by changing a little bit of formatting, sometimes we sort of try to create our own bullets out of little dashes or numbering in a strange way. Well, that's not going to translate to the screen reader. So when we do the list, we want to make sure we actually choose the list function, either bullet or numbering. And there was a little bit of a video I was going to show you. I've been having a little bit of technical difficulties with it. But what I would say is when it comes to numbering, you don't want to number things unless the order matters. So if you think back to my list with the cows, the sheep, and the rabbit, there would really be no need to number that. And in fact, to number them would be a little bit of confusing if I was a student, because now I think the order matters. Like, oh, it matters that, you know, cow was first and rabbit was second, when really it doesn't matter at all. So you don't want to use numbering unless order matters, like a set of steps where you have to follow one after the other. Then numbering absolutely works. But most of the time, and especially if there's no sequence that's really needed for the items, then you want to go with bullets. So that is kind of another error that sometimes people have, where they really needed bullets and they chose numbers, or, you know, they did something where they tried to do a little dash instead of actually using this feature. So I'm going to skip this for now. Oh, sorry. Okay. Another thing we need to think about is our hyperlinks. So I'm sure all of you have seen and clicked on hyperlinks in the past. For those of us who are sighted, they're very easy to find because they're underlined and they're this bright blue. So it's a very rich visual cue for us, for those of us with sight. Helps when we see the blue and we see the underline, we know that's going to lead me somewhere else. I can click on that and I'm going to find outside resources or additional information. But we have students who are blind or visually impaired, and they can't see the hyperlink the way we do. So they're actually going to use something called a screen reader. And I want to show you, because I think really there's no better way to sort of understand what it's like than to hear the screen reader just read it. So this is a 2.5-minute demo of what a screen reader would do. Let me know if you can't hear it.
Heading level 1, pick your perfect beach paradise. Left parent example taken from http://www.expedia.com/daily/theme/vacation/beach. Ask right parent. So many beaches, so little time. You want sunny and sandy but how do you choose from there? That depends on what you'd like to do. Here are a few ideas to get you started. Bullet, love the nightlife. Consider link Cancun and link Jamaica and link, or link South Beach, Florida and link. Bullet, escape civilization, explore the natural beauty of link Kauai and link Turks and Caicos and link, or link Barbados and link. Bullet, for fishing, link Los Cabos and link the link Bahamas and link, and the link Dominican Republic and link are tops for deep sea fishing. Bullet, diving, scuba and snorkeling are great in link Grand Cayman and link Cozumel and link. Heading level 2, so many beaches, so little time. All you want to do is soak up some sun, listen to the waves, and sip a tall, cool drink complete with a tiny umbrella, of course. But where to go? Don't worry, we've created the ultimate selection of vacation spots, so all you have to do is pack a swimsuit and dive in. Maui. Graphic description: photo of a sunset over the ocean through the trees, 4.19 inches wide by 2.50 inches high. There's a reason Maui is famous for its beaches. They really are spectacular. When you're not just basking in the sun, go snorkeling with sea turtles or take a surfing lesson. Link, see Maui vacation packages, and link. South Beach. Graphic title: photo of sun setting behind the urban colorful setting description: silhouetted by palm trees, 4.20 inches wide by 2.50 inches high. Hot sun, hot music, and hot bodies. It must be South Beach. Hop from beach to beach during the day and from club to club at night. And keep an eye out for the many celebs who like to visit. Link, see South Beach vacation packages, and link. Puerto Rico. Graphic title: beach with palm trees leaning out to the ocean over the pristine beach. Description: the skies are blue with puffy clouds, 4.20 inches wide by 2.50 inches high. Although just a few short hours away from Miami, Puerto Rico seems like a world away. Lounge on the powdery beaches, discover Old San Juan, or explore the tropical rainforest. Link, see Puerto Rico vacation packages, and link.
Okay, so whenever I listen to this, I am just so impressed by students who are using this technology to read our courses, because wow, it's a lot to absorb. But hopefully you could hear that when it was properly formatted. The screen reader would say heading 1, heading 2. And then when there was a link, it would say, I think, begin link and then end link or something like that, to let the reader, or the listener, I should say, know that there was a link. Another thing that I just want to point out to you is how laborious it is to listen to somebody read a link out loud. HTTP www.expedia.com-daily-name- So that's kind of another thing you are going to want to avoid. You don't want to have, some links are 5 lines long. Imagine listening to that. But at least having some headings, some bullets, and some properly formatted links would help make this a little bit more understandable. But this is this type of technology is how a visually impaired student is going to be absorbing your material. So it's kind of a different world. Oh, go ahead, Marie.
So Karen, if you do have a link, an HTTP, like a link to a website, is it better to highlight a word like the word example and then use the ability in Canvas to link it using that little icon?
Absolutely. So that's exactly what we're going to want to do. We're going to want to make more descriptive links. We don't want to just have the HTTP. We want to name our links in a way that makes sense. So let me tell you a couple practices to avoid, and then I'll give you some advice about how to do this. So when a screen reader comes across a link, it's going to announce the link. So and then it'll read the text of the link and then announce the end of the link. So for example, when you create a name for your hyperlink, you don't want to say link to MLA resources, for instance, something I might have in my class, because then the screen reader would say link to MLA resources. So that's the first thing. You don't want to put the words link or link to. It's just repetitious for no reason. It's redundant. So the next thing you don't want to do is use ambiguous link text. And I used to do this all the time. So what I mean by this is I used to put in links that would say click here or read more, which seemed fine for a sighted student. But why that is a difficulty for our visually impaired students is because screen readers actually pull out all of our links and create a links list. So you can see an example here from JAWS where a visually impaired student will have a link list, and what appears here is exactly what the link was named. So you can see in some places it just has an address, which isn't descriptive at all. Some of these are maybe okay, right? But then some of them are sort of vague. And then if I had named something read more or click here, right? Maybe I would have a bunch of click here, click here, click here, and the student would have no idea of how to differentiate these in their links list. So to fix that, we want to use better hyperlink practices. So what you want to do is identify the purpose or function of the hyperlink as part of the hyperlink name. So for instance, instead of link to MLA resources, my new hyperlink name might just be MLA resources. Or if I wanted to be specific, MLA resources on in-text citations, right? Something that if just those words are pulled out into the link list, somebody's going to know what they lead to. You want to be descriptive as possible without being overly long. So you don't want a giant hyperlink name because then it's going to be giant in the link list and it's going to be a really long thing for the screen reader to read. So you want to be descriptive yet concise. And then the way that's usually best for both your sighted and users and your visually impaired is usually to integrate the link into the sentence, because the sighted users are going to see the blue and they're going to see the underline and they're going to instantly know it's a link. And the screen reader is going to pull out the link for your visually impaired students. And then, as I mentioned, you don't want the link itself to just be a URL, HTTP ... because that's going to be really long and laborious to listen to as a screen reader reads it. And it's not going to be descriptive at all when it's pulled into a link list. You're not going to know what that leads to if you're a student. So one other sort of best practice when you're thinking about links, because we not only link to outside websites, right? We also link to files. Now, the thing about files Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, not everyone has Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, all these different things. So a best practice that sort of emerged is that when you name the hyperlink to the file, you try to put in brackets what program they're going to need to open it, whether it's a PDF or MS Word or a QuickTime Movie. That's going to be helpful. And this is something that's going to be helpful to your students who are sighted, because they might go to open something and realize, okay, no, I need to get a Microsoft Word viewer, or I need to convert it into something else. Another thing that can be helpful, if it's a big file, I don't think it's really as necessary for small files. But remember, in LACCD, our population is primarily low income. The majority of our students are low income. The majority are food insecure, and 1 out of 5 is housing insecure. So we don't necessarily have students with devices that have unlimited storage, because guess what? That's expensive, right? So it can be nice for students to know how big a big file is before they download it, because they may just want to view it and not download it and have it take up a bunch of space. So this is just sort of a nice practice. When you're linking to a file, have that descriptive name that tells them exactly what it is. And then in brackets, include what type of file it is. And if it's really big, you know, add a comma and say about how much space it's going to take. This is just one of those sort of best practices. Okay. So let me show you, and I think probably the easiest way for me to do this is probably going to be just to do a demo for you. But basically, when you're looking at either editor, let me just tell you this. This is a picture of the new editor, the new RCE, but it's usually, what is this image? And I know it's small, but what does this look like to you, this image?
A link.
Exactly. It kind of looks like a piece of a chain link, something or other. And that's good. That's sort of meant to be a cue that you're talking about links. And so you can link to something inside your course or something outside. So hold on, let me stop screen sharing for a second and let me go ahead on my other screen here and try to open up one of my classes for you. So give me just a second here. I'll open something up. So I am probably going to do something related to MLA just because I'm an English teacher. And so I spend a lot of time trying to help students absorb what MLA is. Okay, so let me go ahead and screen share here. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so right now I'm creating announcements. And let me see if I can make this any bigger. I don't know if I can do that. Hold on. No, it's a little bit hard to see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me see if I can see view zoom in. Okay, zoom in a little bit. It's so small. I mean, even for me looking at it this close. Okay, so let's say I am finding that a lot of my students are struggling with MLA resources. So maybe I'm going to name my announcement MLA resources. And that's going to be header 1 automatically. I don't need to do anything else to it. So let's say I think about it and I think, okay, my students need sort of an introduction to MLA. Maybe I need to talk about the in-text citations. And then I need to think about the works cited page. And this is me just kind of pre-brainstorming some chunking, because now that I've really gotten into accessibility, I think a lot more about chunking and organizing things than I did in the beginning. And I'm actually not sure introduction is that descriptive, so maybe I'll go back and do it. But let's say I make this header 2 and I say MLA stands for the Modern Language Association. This group of scholars periodically updates expectations for academic writing at the MLA homepage or something, right? And this might not be the most descriptive thing in the world, but just sort of me on the fly. So now I'm going to look for the head MLA organization page. Oh, that's taking me to Purdue OWL. So I'm sure it's just something like, yeah, mla.org. Okay. So probably I don't need to link my students to this, but just for the purposes of showing you. So I just have a short website here, right? So I'm going to copy it. It's just mla.org. So I'm going back here and I'm looking at it and I'm going, I was going to call it MLA homepage, but that feels a little bit like it could be confusing. So maybe maybe I add organization. You know, I kind of have to try to think like my students and think about what's going to make sense for them. But once I'm happy with it, let's say this isn't perfect, but let's say I am okay with MLA organization homepage. Now I need to look for that special chain link that you were just pointing out. And so if you look up here, you want the one that's connected, not the one that's broken. The one that's broken is going to literally break the link so it doesn't exist anymore. And we want to create it. So I'm going to click here and go paste, insert link. There you go. So now you can see it's blue. If I hover over it, there's an underline. And my sighted students are going to be able to see this and know that this is a link. And then it's also going to be, because I did it through RCE and it's properly named, it's going to be helpful to a student who is visually impaired. Now, let's say I wanted to link to an introduction. So I know I'm kind of I'm not actually going to link to something about, well, maybe I have an in-text citation here. Let's see. So maybe I'm going to say for in-text citations, I recommend that you check out Purdue OWL's MLA style guide. And I'm going to make that a link in a second. Please also review the announcement. Maybe I'm going to say my announcement on in-text citations. Now I capitalize them. I don't think you really need to, but I've gotten in the habit of capitalizing my links. So, but for this one, I wanted to go back to Purdue OWL for a second, MLA style guide. Okay. So here I am at the MLA formatting and style guide. So I'm copying this right here. I usually use keyboard shortcuts, but you can, right click. And then I'm going to highlight this. Oh, that actually worked. That's interesting. I didn't even do it the way I normally do it. Sorry, I should have done it like that. Okay. And then if I want this one, I'm giving you because I want to show you how you can link to something in your own class. So let's say I want to link to a previous announcement. So now I'm going to look over here, or if I wanted to upload to a file. So right now I want to link to an announcement. So I'm actually going to go here under links. Hopefully you all can see this on the sidebar. I'm going to go to announcements. It's going to give me a second to load. And I'm going to link to this announcement that I had posted in the past called Boost Your Grade, Use MLA Formatting. So I'm just going to click on it. And now this is a hyperlink straight to that announcement. But no one will be confused because I've labeled it announcement on in-text citation. And then you could also do that for files. So let me show you, for example, here is a template, and you don't have to make it capitalized like I do, for a works cited page. So I'm not actually going to link a template. I'm going to link something else, but just for practice, see how I'm going to highlight whatever I want that descriptive text in the link to be. Then instead of links up here, you see I can go to files or images. I'm going to go to files and I'm just going to randomly pick something here, but pretend it's linking to the right thing. Now this is going to link to that. Okay, so let me go ahead and let me save this so you can kind of see. Okay, So now you can see for my students, I have these headers and they are set up in HTML so that a student who is blind or visually impaired will hear header 2. This, I know it appears a little bit small here, but it's actually header 1. And then I have these very descriptive links that could be pulled out by JAWS or another type of screen reader. And I can just click on them and they go directly to where I want them to go. This one's going to take me to my announcement, so they'll stay right in the course. And this one is going to take them to a file. So when I clicked on it, it downloaded.
The other,
Oh, go ahead.
other thing that's great about having those LinkedIn documents is that if you click on the arrow, students can just preview them rather than having to download them. The little
Yeah,
arrow, yeah, that
this one. Oh, yeah, exactly. That
Mhm.
can be really nice because then they don't, like we were saying, they may not all have, a ton of.
Yeah, if you click on preview, if you click on that, then it actually scroll down and it will actually bring up that document.
Oh, that's great. That's really good.
Together
Thank
in
you.
class, you don't have to open it in something else. And if those double-headed arrows on the right makes it larger, makes it a full
This
screen.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that's kind of what you're going to do with the hyperlinks. That's just sort of the nitty gritty. And it takes a little bit of practice, but it's something that kind of the more you do, the easier it gets. So I think we're almost to, I think it was a vet's question about tables. So let me just see for a minute if I can get here back to here. Okay. So one other thing before we get to tables has to do with alt text, which stands for alternative text for images. So of course, when a student has a visual disability, they may not be able to see the images that we pick. So in order for them to have the same experience as a sighted student, if the image has pedagogical value, then we need to create alternative text or alt text, which is a description of the image. Now, if you have a purely decorative image, and I have some of these in mind where I literally just have a picture of a flower or a color burst, and it's just to make the page more interesting, you do not need to do alt text for that. It is only if the picture has a pedagogical purpose. If there is a teaching reason that it's there, then you need a description that explains what the image conveys. So a couple of tips when you're making alt text. So a purely decorative image needs to have something called null in the alt text, but Canvas makes this really easy because they have a checkbox that says basically whether or not the image is decorative. If you just click that it's decorative, it'll do that for you. It'll put in the correct alt text. Another thing you want to avoid with alt text is you don't want to just have it be the file name with .png or .jpg. I don't know why those letters are just so hard for me to say. But you want to take those out. Those endings should not be in there. It should be just a description. If an image has pedagogical value and there's no alt text, then that's a problem. Or if the alt text is not enough for a really content rich image, which I feel for my colleagues, for example, in the sciences or engineering, because I know, for instance, there are graphs of the human body that are extremely complicated. And that would be a real challenge to translate to a description, probably take a lot of time. But if it's needed for pedagogical reasons, you have to sort of do your best to describe it. So for a lot of images, you're only going to need a couple of words. But if, for instance, it's a graph of the body or it's a diagram of the inside of an airplane engine, you're probably going to need more text to make sure that a blind or visually impaired student can understand the image even though they can't see it. And then the other thing is that sometimes people put redundant information or words into the alt text. I'll give you an example here in a minute. So you want the alt text to be equivalent in presenting the same content and function of the image. It should be kind of clear we are trying to give as close of the same experience to your student with a disability as your sighted student. Generally speaking, you want to be succinct, no more than 10 words, unless we're talking about a very content-rich image, a graph, a diagram. Then you need more. And then you also don't want to use the phrases image of or graphic of, because just like the screen reader says link and then reads the name, it already says image and then reads the description. So if you say image of in the description, it'll say image of sunset. So you don't want to use image of. And then of course you don't want those file extensions because that's not really part of the image itself. Another thing to consider is your use of color. So this is something that I initially hadn't thought a lot about, but I'm realizing that it is really quite important. So for those of us who aren't colorblind, we can see a rainbow and it looks like this. But there are lots of different types of color blindness that can affect how a person sees color. So for instance, if there's an absence of green retinal photoreceptors, a person would see the same rainbow over here like this. And you can see how it would be really hard to differentiate between purple and blue or green and orange. They all look quite similar. This is a simulation of what those same colors would look like if you lacked red retinal photoreceptors. Again, a lot of the colors are very similar. It'd be very hard to differentiate. And this would be what the colors would look like if you lacked blue retinal receptors. So you can't assume that all of your students are going to look at your colors and see this. So even though colors are wonderful and you should use them in your page because they'll engage your students and they will heighten the level of professionalism. But you have to remember that for color to work, it needs to be perceivable. So you don't want to make poor color choices because those can affect students who have low vision or who are colorblind. So, for example, to use color wisely, there needs to be enough contrast between your background and the text. So, in a lot of cases, it's really better to use the default settings rather than to get too crazy. But if you are going to kind of play with color and background, you need to make sure that there's enough contrast. You don't want a light text on a light background, a dark text on a dark background, because first of all, your students without a visual disability are probably going to be squinting. I know that ever since we started online teaching all the time, I feel like my eyesight has just gone down the drain and I'm always squinting at things. I can't even imagine how someone who has, color blindness or low vision would do with not enough contrast. So that's really important. And if you're having trouble gauging whether you think something's has enough contrast, there's two tools that are often recommended: the WebAIM color contrast checker and the ACART communications contrast checker. So those can actually look at what you've chosen and try to tell you whether you need more contrast or not. And then the other thing that's important is to avoid using color as the sole means of providing information. So for example, I used to, in my syllabus, I would highlight my pre-writings in purple and the final draft of my essays in red. But if I'm not communicating that information in some other way, that is going to be it could be totally lost on someone who's low vision or colorblind. So color can't be the sole way of providing information. You can use color to enhance, but you have to remember, if that's the only way an idea is being communicated or the way things are being grouped, some students aren't going to be able to see it in the way that you want them to.
Erin,
Yes.
does that apply to some of us? Like I use the Apple Pencil to provide feedback on assignments, and I'll use a green color just so that it's distinct from what the students have typed. Is that an issue?
I think just make sure you're choosing a color with enough contrast. So as
Yeah.
long as it's a green that really is going to stand out from the white, and then
Okay.
make sure you're not using like, oh, my green is my grammar comments. I'm thinking as a English teacher,
Mhm.
and the blue is the MLA, because a person might not be able to distinguish between those. What I
Yeah.
would say is that you know, maybe just ask or listen, and if you're any student says, you know, that they do have issues, you know, maybe experiment with color. And then Alex just wrote in the chat, if you're using colors to annotate, you can use strike through to indicate what to remove and underlines to indicate what to change. Okay, good. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so this last one is kind of an advanced skill, just because it's a little bit more challenging, I think, than the others. But this is to get to your question about tables. So the thing that's challenging with screen readers and tables is that tables can be read from left to right, or they can be read from up to down. And it just kind of it's based on what the designer chooses, right? So a screen reader, if you don't tell the screen reader, here's the header, because the header is either going to go right on the top or usually on the left, it's not going to know how to read the graph, or I guess the table, I should say. So you have to tell Rich Content Editor what your header is, and then a screen reader is going to know. So let me go just for a second. Hold on. Let me go back to my sort of made up page here for just a second and make a really basic table. Let's see. Okay. So remember, we can make a table by this little table icon. So I'm just going to make up a really fast table. So let's say, maybe I'm doing a graph that's, you know, papers and then number of pages or something, just to give students an overview. So paper 1 is 3 to 4 pages, and paper 2 is 4 to 5. And then of course I have more than that, but let's just stop there for now. So the header is going to be the part that tells the reader or the listener what is the top of the graph. So in this case, I've done a top to bottom graph. And before my accessibility training, I would just bold this and move on with my life, right? But we know that bolding isn't going to be the correct solution for a student with disabilities. So let me see, I always kind of have to remind myself of how this goes, but I believe it's table properties, advanced. There's a I'm kind of blanking on how to do it now. I'm sorry. But there's a place. Has anyone, okay, wait, insert row before my brain is literally just sort of giving out
It
on
might
me.
be cell properties.
Wait, what are you trying to do?
Trying to make this a header.
It might be in the cell properties in the advanced. No, I thought it was there.
Maybe I
No,
sorry
Ken,
about
no, you can still, I think, change it if you change it in the RCE from paragraph to header. I think
Oh,
that's,
really? Just here I can do header? Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great. So, and by the way, you may have noticed there's this little man in the circle, and this is a way that lets you check accessibility for what you've just written. So let's see if the little man in the circle is okay with what I just did there. Okay, so this tells me tables should include a caption describing the content of the table. So I would say this is a table showing how many pages are required for each of our papers, something like that. Apply. Okay, so it's saying tables should include at least one header. I am kind of blanking. Does anybody else remember how to do this? I mean, I know I can Google it, but.
There's a set table header right there in the accessibility.
Oh, was there? Okay, wait, hold on. Let me go up a second. Header row. So, okay, there you go. So header row, apply. Okay. So I think it just set the header for me because I said a row, not a column, because this is a row. So let's see now if that worked. Okay, good. So yeah, so I'm sorry, there is, I'm sure I can Google it right now. Hold on, let me set header row in Canvas, RCE. And this is how I figure out everything in life. I Google it. Okay. So this is saying go to cell properties, in the scope menu, choose column and row. Wow, this looks confusing. Okay. Well, let me tell you this. If you're coming back next week, I'll try to review this and have like a little sheet of steps. But yeah, what I would say is for now, just use create accessibility and then just tell it whether the header is a row like this or a column would be up and down, obviously. So, and that's how you could do it. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead. I know we're we're really running out of time. Sorry about that. Okay, let me go ahead and try to see if I can finish this really quickly. Thank you so much for your patience. I know it's a lot of material. So then I would just say when you're retrofitting your pages, you can use the little man in the circle to help you. And you just need to look for a lot of the things that we talked about. So blocks of text are chunked into easily digestible sections. If you're long-winded like me, watch your paragraph lengths. Remember, they should be shorter than academic writing. Remember that to make headings real headings through the RCE, made through paragraph styles, not just a bigger bold font. Make sure that bulleted or numbered lists are formatted with the list tool. Make sure your hyperlinks are meaningful text. And make sure images have appropriate alternate text unless they're decorative, right? And then that color contrast ratios meet accepted standards. And then one note on Ally. So Ally is what is embedded in our canvas that gives us this little colored dial that sort of tells you how accessible it thinks you are. Red is being, not as accessible as it should be, orange being medium, and green being good. So Ally does offer you sometimes the ability to change something that is not accessible into something that is accessible. But our distance education team was told that as of right now, there's an issue with Ally where it will change the alt tags for the current course. But when you go to copy it into, for instance, spring 2021, those tags will go away. And LACCD is working with Ally to fix that. But for those of you who are building your shells for the next term, it's better to use the little man in the circle and sort of Canvas's built-in accessibility checker than to make changes through Ally. I would use Ally to maybe look at what might need to be improved, but actually make the changes outside of Ally. That way, when you import your course from one place to the next, those accessibility decisions will move with it. Okay. And then just sort of in closing, some little bit of advice, and then I'll look through the questions because I know I probably haven't hit everything. So for checking external web pages, Chrome has a tool called Wave, and it lets you check accessibility features on a web page. It isn't completely comprehensive, but it is a really good starting point. So you can download the extension and then have it check a page that you want to link your students to. So that's one thing that I would recommend thinking about using, the Wave tool. And then another thing is that you can actually try listening to some of your content with a screen reader. Now, listening to your whole course would probably take a very long time, but you can try a page here or there just to see. So for instance, these are all free, easy to install. They're not going to be as robust as what, an actual visually impaired student would use, but they can kind of give you an idea. So in Chrome, you can use Chrome Vox, and that will read the page similar to a screen reader. In PC, if you use a PC, there's something called NVDA, and it was open source reader developed by two blind software engineers. And then if you use Mac, you can turn on the voiceover option in preferences. So on your Mac, you go from preferences to accessibility to voiceover. And all of those will let you kind of simulate what a blind or visually impaired student would experience with a screen reader. So I know this is a whirlwind tour. Thank you for sticking with me. I know it's a lot. I know that I talk fast and it's a lot of slides. But hopefully this at least gave you sort of a beginning place to think about using the RCE Rich Content Editor to create a content page that everyone can navigate, not just your students with disabilities, but all of your students. Use headings to create a structured page that is easy for them to navigate. Use bulleted and numbered lists when appropriate. Use color wisely, create meaningful links to web resources inside and outside our courses, provide alternative text for images, and create tables that can be navigated by all students. Adrian, did you have something that you wanted to show? I'm sorry, I just saw this. Are you still here?
Yes.
Can I let you show it? Adrian has something he wants to show.
Well, I wanted to let everyone know for a blind student how they navigate, and they will master the keyboard, and they really don't need monitors because they're physically blind, right? And so, and this is an example of what that means. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so for a blind student, this is what they use. It's the moment they get to your page, and so I mean they will type the keyboard, and so fast. So if they run into an issue like a PDF image, right? They cannot use the shortcuts on the keyboard, and so that would be a big issue if you have an image, as a PDF or so. The students are blind students are serious, and they will make their life easy because they can navigate your website just like you and I, or that is visual and sighted. And so I just wanted to share this screen, how they get to use your website or Canvas, and just to give you an example. And that's that's all they need really. It's just they're so trained to use the keyboard and make their life easy and they will know right away what's working, what's not working, and and let you know.
Thank you so much. And just kind of a quick reminder, by the way, oh, hold on. Sorry, I need to share my screen for a minute, that we have these two other sessions because I know this is a lot of material. I mean, it's kind of crazy to even really try to do it in 90 minutes. So I really appreciate you kind of coming along for the ride. But it is quite possible that you won't retain all of it if this is brand new to you, just because the brain sort of can't take in so much new information at the same time. But if you can return on the next 2 Tuesdays, the next one will really focus on accessible document design. So the steps you can take in Word or Google or PowerPoint to make those documents accessible. This one was a little bit more focused on the Canvas page. And then on December 8th, we'll be talking about accessible video design. So assessing the production quality, captioning it, curating good video resources, and embedding them. So if you are free, please go ahead and consider attending those. If you could do me a favor, I just want to make sure I get proper attendance for this. If you're still here, if you could just leave me a comment in the chat box, that will help me just make sure that I mark you here for the sort of flex end of things. Are there other questions that you want me to answer? And after you kind of state that you're here, if you need to go, I know we're running a little bit late, that's fine. But are there other questions that I I'm sure I missed a few things in chat that you have for me or our DSPS team.
I'd like to ask a question.
Oh, go ahead. Good to see you again.
Thank you. And these are wonderful trainings, but now I'm really perplexed about this issue of PDF files. In kinesiology and health, specifically health involving medicine, etc., a great many documents are in PDF format. And I am very strong, powerful, if you want to use this expression, on getting students to authentic resources. I don't like to be the translator, so to speak, in between myself and what are powerful, like if you could talk to Dr. Fauci, you would prefer talking to him to talking to me, right? And so I use PDF files extensively in my course, and sometimes the assignment involves sending them out to websites where they will be perusing, and not everything is PDF. But why I'm concerned about what Mr. Gonzalez said is I have, for example, one really powerful scientific article, and these are heavily copywritten. You're not allowed to alter, modify. This is not, Creative Commons